However, he will hold it until you try to stop, which is probably going to happen. People typically start by attempting to start the RPM too low. He will hold it until it is high enough to assist you somewhat, but you will still do it. There was ice on the road. They were loud warnings. However, Lisa has never given up easily. She took hold of the wheel and faced the most hazardous area of ice on the map, defying counsel and a variety of odds. This was a test of survival, bravery, and tenacity rather than just another haul. Even seasoned truckers were stunned by what transpired next. This ride gets frosty very quickly, so fasten your seatbelt. The queen of frigid roads is Lisa. For no apparent reason, no one gets caught behind an 18-wheeler speeding at 16 mph on a frozen highway. And unless there's a burning desire deep within them, no one does it on North America's worst roadways. Lisa Kelly has carried that type of passion ever since she got into a truck for the first time. Lisa's favorite spot is ice road truckers, so you may have seen her there. That woman with the steely nerves that remain composed while her tires skate on black ice sheets, the mischievous smile, and the braided blonde hair tucked under a beanie. Given her current addiction to frigid roads, some would assume that she was born that way or has always been that way. However, Lisa wasn't always the cold road queen. Her path began far from the spotlight, and even more away from the self-assurance she now displays. The year 1980 saw Lisa's birth in Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the age of 6, her family relocated to Alaska, a place that would permanently influence her. Alaska is wild, harsh, and cold. A state with fewer highways, different laws, and a slightly more edge-of-life lifestyle. When Lisa was younger, she was tenacious, which indicates that she didn't hesitate to attempt new things. She was capable of daring anything. She trained as a motocross racer and rode a dirt bike. For a while, she even participated in professional competition. Lisa was learning how to operate machinery, make sharp turns, and eat mud for breakfast at a time when most teenage girls were daydreaming about makeup or shopping excursions. She was more mature than her friends and responsible from a young age. Lisa was a school bus driver before she started trucking, and it wasn't even amusing. She had to put in a lot of effort at a very young age to drive to and from school and back home to deal with household duties and other problems. Her experience as a truck driver taught her how to control big cars in dangerous situations and maintain composure when 40 yelling children decided to try her patience. Unbelievably, that employment served as a springboard for her life. It provided her with a sense of direction and accountability. Something inside her gradually changed, and she no longer only wanted to drive. She wanted to haul too. However, it wasn't easy to be a female truck driver in Alaska. The fact that the employment is only for women made people not respect it. There was no queue of mentors waiting to help Lisa. She had more skeptics and rolled eyes than supporters. When she eventually made her way into the trucking industry, she heard it all. "You're too little. When things get difficult, you'll cry. The season won't last for you." When fans first saw Lisa in Season 3 of the History Channel series, she instantly began to blow their minds. The producers didn't use her as a gimmick because she was the first female driver to appear on the show. She could do the job, which is why she was there. She was competent and talented. She was able to compete with the veterans. Those frigid paths had been traversed by men like Alex Degorski and Jack Jesse for longer than she had been alive. And Lisa didn't flinch from the first day. Let's make everything clear. Dramatic editing is a strength of reality TV. However, Lisa's experience traveling those roads was really challenging. The streets she traveled on weren't your typical thoroughfares. They included the Dempster, the Dalton Highway, and other areas of icy terrain where a mistake could send someone hurtling through ice, topple a truck, or break an axle. By alone, the Dalton Highway is a monster. It ends close to the Arctic Ocean after traveling 414 miles in isolated Alaska. It features treacherous inclines like the notorious Adagon Pass, a mountain portion famed for avalanches and deadly drop-offs, as well as abrupt turns and whiteout snowstorms. Gas stations and guardrails are scarce. Errors are absolutely not tolerated because she must prove herself in every mile, load, and storm. Lisa is even more vulnerable than men. The mechanics examined her rig twice as if they were expecting it to collapse under her control. Other motorists sat in silence, wondering if she should be out there at all. Despite hearing all of this, Lisa put on her gloves and pressed the gas pedal, not giving much thought to what they were saying about her. She was a fan favorite because of her composure and defiance. She didn't talk trash and wasn't noisy or hostile. She simply performed the task more effectively than most others could. Fans came to see that Lisa was more than simply a show token as the seasons went by. She had the makings of a trucking legend. The majority of people are unaware that despite all of that strain, Lisa had her breaking points. She coped with her fatigue, loneliness, anxiety, etc. Driving in a blizzard for 12 to 16 hours a day is physically taxing and disrupts your schedule and thoughts. You begin conversing with your steering wheel and lose all sense of stillness. Your capacity to remain concentrated when every part of you cries out for rest is the only thing standing between you and the next catastrophe. And Lisa repeatedly performed that exact action. Without any attempting, she evolved into a role model. Girls began to follow her tale all around the nation and even beyond. She demonstrated to them that fearlessness and femininity were not mutually exclusive. She demonstrated to them that a woman was just as capable as anyone else of handling 80 pounds of steel and ice. However, all of that culminated in a single instance, a single path, a single choice, a single run that would put all she had learned to the test, and a single path that even the veterans didn't want to discuss. There was one cargo that no one wanted to carry. Storms were coming quickly, and the weather had been worse than anticipated. Only a few days prior, mechanics had raised worries about her truck, and other drivers had told her bluntly, "You don't need to take this one." Despite this, she agreed. The caution they issued to her, "You would even be afraid to drive on a road with a high accident rate and a reputation for potholes. Not to mention that you wouldn't pay attention to other people's cautions." But Lisa was completely unfrightened. Lisa wasn't simply that gal on I Once Rode Truckers when this trip came up. She has experienced seasons. In the event of a whiteout, she had transported heavy goods across the Dalton Highway. She transported vital components to isolated oil rigs and outposts where access was limited to crossing ice bridges and frozen lakes. On Wednesday, they began to caution her about the road. The dispatch center rapidly learned that a vital delivery was required at a distant oil site north of Dead Horse, Alaska, late Wednesday afternoon. It was no ordinary haul. The site was in danger of shutting down entirely if this emergency generator wasn't delivered within 20 hours. The only viable path was a seldom traveled diversion with recently cleared gas. This is because crews had not yet been able to dig out the regular road after it was buried by an avalanche a few days prior. That diversion passed across a section of dangerous and unstable terrain. Truckers with decades of experience are known as veteran drivers. They glanced at the map and remarked, "Hard pass." According to reports, even Jack Jesse, who enjoyed danger and was one of the greatest ice road drivers in the industry, cautioned Lisa against it. He told her it wasn't worth it, not that one. Earlier that week, Lisa's heavy-duty Kenworth truck had displayed symptoms of stress. Although it wasn't much, her rear axles were marked for examination, a minor misalignment that shouldn't have been a problem under normal circumstances. The misalignment, however, can be the difference between having traction and sliding sideways onto a precipice or even a snowbank on that ice. The dispatch team told her everything without holding anything back. They said that this one is not required. You have the option to refuse. Everybody else has. However, Lisa flatly rejected this. Perhaps it was the pressure that this delivery might affect the operation of a complete oil site. It might have been pride, or maybe simply who she was. She had heard it previously. She had been told, "You can't," before, and each time she had done so, she had used that doubt as fuel and a trigger point. At last, she agreed to it. She did not accept the position out of pride. She was fully aware of the risk involved. She trusted her instincts and herself. But she also knew full well what could go wrong with it. Even the experience she had gained, mile by mile, on roads like these, she trusted. The tension remained strong despite that. For safety, the Ice Road Truckers video team even thought about retreating. Producers argued about whether to allow her to try it at all. Lisa was as composed as always, but anyone who knew her would notice that she was intensely focused, something that only occurs when you know that things could soon go out of hand. One of the younger drivers came up to her before she departed. After only 2 seasons, he gave her a folded letter that said, "There's no shame in saying no. Decline and come back safe." She nodded, smiled, and placed the note into her glove box. But she didn't change her mind. That night, Lisa thoroughly inspected her truck not once, twice, or even 3 times. She inspected the tires, chains, and nuts. Reluctantly, the mechanics gave her the all clear. She was awake and very active before daylight. The CB radio was checked, the tires were chained, the coffee was in hand, the engine was roaring, and the lights were piercing the freezing darkness. When she understood it was not a typical path on the Dalton, things became more apparent to her. There were no other trucks in front of her or behind her, nor were there any routine checkpoints. Furthermore, there was no convoy. Lisa was flying alone, miles of unexplored icy solitude, her cargo and herself alone on the road. The first and second hours of the trip went without a hitch. Her pickup held still when section of the road was cleared. But eventually, things started to become more complex. Lisa maintained her hands firm and her gaze fixed on the road. She had been prepared and groomed for it. However, she was unaware that a wind gust notice had been issued overnight, and no one had alerted her to this fact. A system of tremendous pressure was rapidly advancing. The gusts were harsher the further north she drove. By lunchtime, the CB began to work intermittently, act strangely, and produce static. Then there was a sharp hush as the satellite radio went out. Imagine traversing an ice ridge with 7,000 pounds of steel. No backup or radio, and nothing but sheer drops on either side. You would tremble and be afraid of practically everything, including yourself and your thoughts. Lisa wanted to ask for assistance, but there were no outposts for hours. Since the snow had begun to whip up in waves, there was no visibility behind her and no cell service. It was only pressure and white noise, and things were going to get even worse. Lisa was starting to feel as though her bones were on fire. She only wanted to go back and never go on a voyage like this again at this point. But she had already gone too far, and there was no going back now. It was the day she drove. The cold had already taken over everything by the time Lisa got halfway. The enormous emergency generator cargo was securely fastened and held steady while the vehicle continued to operate normally. It was strange because it wasn't apparent or mechanical. It was only an emotion. She had a gut feeling that this journey was different from all others. The journey began quite peacefully, and Lisa left before dawn after accepting the invitation that others had turned down. She tightened her hold on the wheel. After a few hours, the tires rubber hardened, the temperature spiked, and everything changed. Her diesel started to gel, and metal cracks got easier. Electronics also began to malfunction. The radio stopped working more than half an hour ago, and her GPS had one problem. The road ahead constricted, and the whole thing reminded her that she was alone. They had warned her about the diversion, and this was it. An avalanche had blocked the way, forcing the closure of the original route. As a result, the firm discovered a dangerous one-way side route that went around a partially frozen river, climbed a ridge, and then descended into a small clearing. The walkway was not well liked. Some had only used it once or twice, and hardly anyone knew about it. No one had used it alone before Lisa. Now Lisa could see the beginning of it. The entry was flagged with small orange flags. There appeared as though no one had been through this area in weeks due to the fresh snow. Even though the snowplow team had probably been through there 2 days prior, she halted the truck to consider her options. Since she gave it her all, no one would hold it against her if she decided to give up on the journey and head home at this point. She inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, and then depressed the gas. The truck then moved stealthily ahead. The path she was now traveling wasn't really a road. There wasn't even enough snow for her tires on the crowded trail. Not only was there no safety zone, but there were no rails or markings. Lisa was aware that her truck might be dragged down the riverbed bank by the weight of the trailer if the right side tires slipped off the edge. Furthermore, nobody was available to assist her if the ice did break. She was alone on the road, so if she called out, no one would hear. She was strong enough to keep going after realizing that no matter how hard she tried, she would not be able to obtain aid. Lisa continued. Despite her fear, she was trembling. Her gaze shifted from the road to the gauges and mirrors every second, then back to the road. The tire pressure monitor was still functioning when she checked the vehicle multiple times. She just tested the heater and made the necessary adjustments to prevent fogging of the windshield. Her hand remained fixed on the steering wheel. It was sturdy but not heavy. The wind returned more forcefully after 15 minutes. It was more intricate than before. slamming into her choke from the side. She could feel the tiny tilt of the trailer in her chest, and the heightened terror should have subsided. After letting go of the gas pedal, she slowed the truck and lightly applied the brakes.